Good afternoon, Philippines, and hello, world. This is your host once again, Gregory M. Panalaga, and for today's talk show, we will talk about one of the most important topic in this generation, and that is about our Philippine flag and the heraldic code of the Philippines. Please welcome our first guest. She's a future educator taking a Bachelor's of Elementary Education, major in General Education, Miss Jeneline Barcelona.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Please take a seat.
Thank you.
And our second guest, she's also a future educator taking a Bachelor's in Elementary Education, major in General Education. Please welcome Miss Fidelin Eliedo. Thank you so much for accepting my invitation, Ms. Eliedo and Ms. Barcelona. It's such a pleasure to be here, to have you on the show. Now, we will talk about this topic, the national flag and the heraldic code of the Philippines. Now, what can you share about it, Ms. Barcelona?
Good afternoon. So let's start with the section 26, which is about the flag days. As you notice, during our elementary education or even high school days, we were required to bring our national flag on every Independence Day on June 12. But in fact, it is starting on May 28, and June 12 is the last day of National Flag Days.
Wow, that's an amazing and surprising information that you have there, Ms. Barcelona. Now, moving to you, Ms. Eliedo, what is your thought or what is something that you can share with us today?
So let's talk about section 17, the hoisting and lowering of the flag. Once you hoist or lower the flag, it shouldn't touch the ground or it shouldn't touch soil or water or any objects. And it should be done ceremoniously and synchronously with the national anthem.
Having said that, that means the song should be done synchronously with the lowering of the flag.
Yes.
Alright, thank you for that information. have a question for you, Ms. Brisalote, and I think our viewers also would be so curious to know about this. I think you've seen this in televisions that, let's like for example, our Staff 44, our fallen heroes. We noticed that their caskets were covered by our Philippine flag. Now, what is the reason behind that?
That is because we are honored the death of our militaries. And it is also applicable for our veterans of the previous wars, our national artists, such as our painters, and for our civilian who have rendered distinguished service of our nations.
Thank you so much for that information, Ms. Brisalote. Now, let's proceed to you, Ms. Almedo. I also have a question regarding the half-mast. Now, wherever I go sometimes, or I even watch it on television, that our flag is only at half of the pole. What is the reason behind it?
Thank you for that question. So the reason behind that the flag is half-mast, one of the government official has died.
So, can you give me an example? What type of officials are we talking about here?
So let's say, for example, the president died. So the flag should be half-mast within 10 days.
Does that only applicable to the current president of the Philippines or the country?
It is also applicable for the former presidents.
And is that all? Like the current president and former presidents?
The vice president and the House of Representatives for 7 days, and the cabinet members for 5 days.
Thank you so much for that, Ms. Eliedo. And we also have here some guests. They are students in Cebu Eastern College, which will also ask questions about our topic today. So please welcome, first of all, we have here Mr. Raymond Cabahar, a fourth-year student in Cebu Eastern College, taking up Bachelor's of Secondary Education, major in English. And we also have here Miss Shelomay Versedic, also a fourth-year student in Cebu Eastern College, taking up Bachelor's of Elementary Education, major in General Education. Welcome to the show. Now, students, this is the best time for you to ask our guest here, Miss Versalore and Miss Eliedo. Let's start with you, Miss Versedic.
Thank you so much. So for our first question is that, what does it mean when the Philippine flag is inverted?
Thank you for that question. So when the Philippine flag is inverted, it means our nation is experiencing war. And let me correct your thoughts about it. It doesn't mean that the flag is inverted. We are provoking other nations war, but our nation is experiencing war.
Thank you so much.
It's great information that we can share to our viewers. Thank you for that. Now let's proceed to you, Mr. Raymond Cabahar.
Okay, Ms. Brisalote, can you elaborate each symbols of the Philippine flag?
Okay, Mr. Cabahar, let's start with the 8 rays of the sun. It represents the 8 provinces of Manila, namely Manila, Bulacan, Pampanga, Morong, Nueva Ecija, Laguna, Bulacan, and Cavite. And for the stars, it signifies the islands of Luzon, Mindanao, and Panay, are also known as the Visayas. While the blue is for peace, red is for war, and the white is for purity.
Thank you for that information, Mr. Salvador. Now, that's something that is very new to us, right? So let's proceed to you, Ms. Brusele. Do you have your last question?
Yes. And for my last question is, why do we need to show respect every time we sing the national anthem?
Let me explain that in simplest way. We are Filipinos and we live in the Philippines. And that flag represents as our country. So we must respect. If you don't respect, you are not deserving to be called a Filipino.
Indeed, that is pretty correct, Ms. Brisalote. If you are not proud to become a Filipino, then you don't have the right to live in the Philippines. Part of that is we have to respect our flag. Moving on to you, Mr. Raymond Cabahar. You have your last question.
Yes, I do have a question. Why do we need to include the singing of the national anthem in every occasional event?
So it is a way of showing our patriotism and it signifies our identity as Filipinos.
And that wraps up our discussion and show for today. So I would like to say thank you for our guests, Ms. Bersalote and Ms. Elguedo, as well as our fourth-year students here from Cebu Eastern College. Thank you so much for accepting my invitation. So I hope viewers at home, you learned something from us today. And this is your host once again, Gregory M. Panalaga. See you next episode.
Ito sa atong flag sa Pilipinas. 3 stars. 3 stars eh. Okay. Sakto sir.
Very good kay sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Kailan ang araw ng kagitingan? April 9. April 9. Correct. Salamat. Mura dito kuya. Thank you. Salamat.
Limot ka na ba ito?
Independence Day, sir. Independence Day.
Supporting.
Ako. Mayroon ako. Sige, June 12.
Another question.
Another question. Ito, let's.
Katawa kayo magdilo.
Oo.
Ano ba yung hirap?
Tahon? Kaya humahilo. Perlas ng silanganan. Alab ng puso. Sa dibdib mo'y buhay.
Anong pambansang awit ng Pilipinas?
Ilong pa panghihirap.
Yes, very good. Ano sir ha? Kanta ko sir, niya imong sumpaya. Ano sir ha? Ang hinira ka naman ko sir. Kanta ko, sige sir. Lord, abayang magiliw. Sa silanganan.
Oh, kamarada ka naman mo yun. Kamarada.
Kinsay nag-compose sa kanta nga Lupang Hinirang? Wala ka ba? Si Julian Felipe. Kani last na lang ang question. Sa atong Philippine flag, unsay meaning sa blue color? Kuan. Okay. Okay, kuya please or sis. Pwede bang gawing disenyo o palamuti ang isang watawat ng Pilipinas? Oo. So, it's a no. Kay kanang naman tayo Republic Act nga dili pwede bugal-bugalan atong Philippine flag. Thank you.
Sino ang lumikha ng awit ng Pilipinas?
Kinsay author sa
Pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Sa Lupang Hinirang.
Or nag-compose. Composer sa kanang sa national anthem.
Started with letter G.
J.
Let's go.
Okay, ina lang. Juan ka ng Julian Felipe.
Ah, yan Philippine.
Wala.
Okay. 1, 2, 3.
Lupang ini.
Di ka magsisisi sa dagat at bundok, siya tumula sa langit mo'y mugaw. Ilaan tula at awit na nalayang minamahal, agsat ng matawan mo'y tagumpay na naglilingin.